Now, today's arraignment marks the second this year for the former president. Trump was in a New York courtroom in April, if you'll recall, on state charges for falsifying business records. He pleaded not guilty there, and he returned to court a month later where a judge issued a protective order limiting what evidence he can talk about publicly. Joining me now is criminal law expert Lou Shapiro. Thank you for joining us. Lou, we expect to hear from Trump tonight. We just heard Haley talking about it, and he also spoke after his arraignment in April, really railing against the charges and the Manhattan DA in that case. If you're his attorney, what advice are you giving him as he addresses supporters tonight?
I think if I'm his attorney, usually I would tell a client not to say anything. But in light of the fact that this is former President Trump, I think the next best thing is to telegraph to the prosecution the defense and the uphill battle that on his side they expect the prosecution will have, which is really an argument of twofold. Number one, selective prosecution. He's going to come out and say, if you're prosecuting me, you also have to prosecute other individuals that are culpable for similar conduct. Why isn't Clinton prosecuted for the missing emails? Why isn't Biden prosecuted for the mishandling of classified documents that were in his car in his convertible in the garage? Why just me? This is selective prosecution. It goes against all law and values, and I should be exonerated for that reason alone. His second prong will be the Presidential Records Act. He will argue that under the law, I'm given some grace period to sort through all these boxes, see what's mine, what's not mine, what's classified, what's not, organize it, and have my attorneys return to the National Archives. I was complying with it. It took me some time, but I did return it. It may have been a delay. It may have been unwarranted, but is it illegal? He will say it's not. And that will be his two big line items that if I was his attorney, I would seek to stress moving forward.
I mean, going back to that line item one, first prong regarding other potentially similar cases here, could you just answer, are there similarities or are there distinctions between what we're seeing unfold here versus Clinton and cases like that?
So it depends where one draws the line. If we look at a strict reading of the law, the black letter law, it's a president must provide the classified documents once he or she leaves office. So if we apply that to Biden, you know, he since has left office at some point in time, going back again to the vice presidential days. So that alone, the argument can be made, there it is right there. There is the obligation of the Assistant U.S. Attorney's Office to file charges. If you're going to take the view, well, President Biden was more cooperative, he returned them sooner, well, that's different, right? And a lot of legal experts are saying had Trump just returned these documents much sooner, he wouldn't even be in the situation that he's in today. But we don't really know that.
Yeah. Well, the judge says Trump cannot talk to the co-defendant in this case, Walt Nauta, about the case. Is this standard procedure? And also, can we expect any changes when Nauta is back in court in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, it is a bit strange, actually, that a defendant has been ordered not to speak to another defendant. I guess the judge is issuing this order in the abundance of caution. Certainly, attorneys have the ability to share information if they enter into what's called a joint defense agreement. So it's just one order that was made. We don't know exactly why. The obvious interpretation would be that there would be a concern that of witness tampering by one defendant against another, and the prosecution would not want that. So this is precaution being taken to address that potential concern.
Another layer here is the judge overseeing the case is a Trump appointee, Eileen Cannon. In your view, is there a conflict of interest here?
So the argument that's being made by one camp is that there is a conflict of interest because she has made previous rulings on the case which has benefited Trump in terms of a special master being needed to be appointed to decide what's privileged, what's not privileged in terms of the discovery and documents. That ruling was subsequently reversed by the Court of Appeal. So in light of the fact that she was appointed by Trump, that she's made favorable rulings towards Trump, there are those that are saying that she's biased, can't be fair, and she should recuse herself. Realistically and practically speaking, those are not grounds for a judge to recuse themselves. Many judges are appointed by a president, and by the mere fact that they've previously made a favorable ruling once doesn't mean that they're necessarily biased towards an individual. They may have just made that ruling based on the merits of the case.
Trump says he does not plan to drop out of the race for the White House, even if he's convicted. There are questions here because that's allowed. How is that legal? If you could just explain that to folks wondering, how can all this be happening and you can still continue?
So there's nothing in the United States Constitution, which is the legal document that guides our country, which says that a president who is charged or convicted of a crime cannot serve as president. So by mere fact that he is allowed to do it would open the opportunity for him to run for president, potentially get elected, and then have the ability to actually pardon himself of the federal crimes. He couldn't pardon himself of the state crimes. Only a governor can do that. But he could pardon himself of the federal crimes. Federal crimes obviously carry much more weight than a state case. So that would be of the utmost importance to him to be able to do that. So the filing of these federal charges really, aside from the fact that it is supposedly bolstering his polls in his side of the camp and allowing for fundraising opportunities, it really just gives Trump himself all the more incentive to run and win, because now he's not just winning for the benefit of the country or the benefit of his fans. He's winning, hopefully, for himself and the benefit of his freedom.
Yeah. Criminal law expert Lou Shapiro, thank you so much for joining us and for your insight. Very helpful with all these developments.